I'm Josh, and I'll be refuting the affirmative to legalizing marijuana from Prop 64. So my opponent, Victor, states that this would reduce harm for young people and people of color. So let's go into the effects that marijuana can have on young people. So marijuana definitely negatively affects youth. Marijuana use usually begins in adolescence. 70% of the 2.4 million people who began using in the last year were aged 12 to 20, according to the National Institute of Drug Abuse. So if we're talking about protecting our youth, legalizing marijuana is not the answer for that. Similarly, studies show that marijuana interferes with attention, motivation, memory, and learning. So students who use marijuana regularly tend to get lower grades and more likely drop out of high school than those who don't. And again, that's according to the National Institute of Abuse. So the daily marijuana use has more than tripled in the past 2 decades among college students, with 1.8% smoking marijuana daily in 1994 to 4.5% in 2004 and 5.9% in 2014. So we're seeing an exponential growth in people being exposed to marijuana at early ages. So let's talk about the effects that has on adolescents. So the adolescent brain is still developing. It is essentially vulnerable to drug use. So regular heavy marijuana users, use by teens has been seen to lead to an IQ drop of up to 8 points. So that is very significant. And if we're talking about the future of our country with our youth, providing them with a drug that can affect them later on in life, that's not smart. So let's move on to long-term marijuana use. The effects on starting from a young age and growing up with the addiction. So long-term marijuana use can lead to a huge amount of addiction to the substance. So approximately 9% of those who experiment with marijuana become addicted, according to the criteria for dependence in the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders. The number goes up to about 1 in 6 among those who start using marijuana as teenagers, and up to 25 to 50% among those who use marijuana daily. And according to the 2012 National Survey on Drug Use and Health, an estimated 2.7 million people 12 years of age or older met the criteria for dependence on marijuana. There are also recognition of cannabis withdrawal syndrome, which includes irritability, sleeping difficulties, dysphoria, intense cravings, and anxiety that creates cessation, which leads to relapses and people becoming more dependent on the substance. So let's move on to how it's going to create drops. So this was touched upon a little bit by Victor, and I kind of want to talk about the unintended consequences of that. So legalizing marijuana kills pharmaceutical jobs. So we're not just generating jobs, we're taking jobs from other companies, basically. So a survey conducted by the Center for Addictions Research of BC found that the adult therapeutic cannabis users found that 87% of respondents gave up prescription medications. So they're taking their money for the prescribed medications and they're putting it towards marijuana to feed that addiction. Similarly, 80% of respondents reported substituting cannabis for those prescription drugs. So this is not something that we're just generating jobs out of nowhere, out of thin air. We're taking jobs from other areas. And how big is the pharmaceutical company to our economy and our jobs? Well, the U.S. Biopharmaceutical sector employs nearly 850,000 workers and supports a total of 3.4 million jobs across the country. So that is very significant, and that is taking a big dip out of those jobs. And let's talk about saving money. So yes, they're talking about how they had a surplus, but let's talk about some of the health risks that would increase spending in healthcare. So marijuana cigarettes, well actually we were talking about tobacco actually, the comparison between tobacco and marijuana. So marijuana cigarettes deposit 4 times more tar into smokers' lungs than tobacco-based cigarettes, according to the American Lung Association. So it actually provides more tar for your lungs and is more harmful for your lungs than tobacco is. Also, you have a risk of getting heart disease. So marijuana use raises the heart rate from 20 to 100% for up to 3 hours after it's been smoked, increasing the risk of getting other health problems such as sorry, that's really hard to pronounce. Arrhythmia. I'm sorry. Heart palpitations and heart attack. The effects on the cardiovascular system can make smoking marijuana a health risk activity for seniors or other people who are suffering from cardiac conditions. And saving money on incarcerations, let's look at the increase in DUIs, which we would incarcerate people for. In 2014 and 2015, 15% of all DUI citations issued involved cannabis use, according to the Colorado Department of Transportation. So an extra 15% of people are driving while intoxicated. And we are spending that amount of money to incarcerate them. So we may be saving money in some areas, but in other areas we're losing. So it's a wash, but we're also having other unintended consequences. Thank you.